In a world driven by material pursuits, where money has become the measure of our value and our worth, many are struggling. Today's video is looking at, has money become your God? Let's get into it. Hi and welcome to Oaklaw Door. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Claire Attio. For those that are returning subscribers, thank you. And today we're looking at, has money become your God, or are you surrounded by those where money has become their God, and so you find yourself struggling within those paradigms? I will be referring to some notes. It is a big topic. I felt a need to record this video because it's something that came up on my spectrum this week. It was interesting. I was having a conversation with my mother and she was asking me what I was currently doing, and I said I was working on a project, and she was like, oh, that'd be nice. Oh, that'd bring in some money. And I went, actually it's a non-profit. And she went, whoa, how's that going to pay the bills? And it's a very valid question. I get that, but not everything is about money. And it's very difficult, and I understand her reaction because she was a war baby, and so there was scarcity even of the basic needs to live life. So she grew up with that scarcity. Now, many of us are very fortunate that we don't have those scarcities. I've had times where the bank account is empty and I think, oh crikey, how am I going to pay the next bill? A lot of people would call that scarcity. It's just a moment in time. There are times when I've gone without a meal because there has only been enough there to feed my daughter, but it's a moment in time. I've never gone hungry, and I think I was super fortunate. And this is the thing I want to get across for to begin with, is that it's not selling myself as an angelic being. It's just that I was super fortunate to meet another beautiful soul in my young adult years who had experienced times of real scarcity, and so they had a deep understanding of the needs of the people that were there. And I say that I was in my 20s and I was doing a course with another nurse, and I'm not going to go into her story because it's private, but we went to dinner, we had a pizza, we ate half of it, and she asked for the other half to be boxed up. And we went back out into the streets and we were walking back to our digs where we were staying, and she not only gave the pizza to somebody that was living on the streets, but she sat down and had a conversation with him. And me in my young 20s and never being exposed to that was, first of all, I'm not going to lie, first of all it was like horror. It was like, what are you doing? It's because I'd been filled with fear because of lack of understanding. I'd always been taught to cross over the road, to not get involved, to keep myself safe. And yet here I was, as a young 20-year-old, I was stood with somebody who is living on the streets, having a conversation, treating them like a valid part of society. And I think that was the thing that stuck with me, was it hit me like a wow factor. And for some of you, you think, well, crikey, wasn't that your norm? And no, it wasn't my norm. It wasn't how I'd been brought up. And not from any maliciousness, it just wasn't part of my world. I grew up in a part of England that was reasonably affluent, and so it wasn't part of my world. And so that was such a beautiful gift that was given to me. And it was a gift that I continued, because after that one incident, whenever I seen somebody on the streets, I would talk to them. I would ask them what they needed. I would ask them if they would like me to buy them some food, a hot drink, some soup. And I would treat them like a valid member of society. It was the most beautiful gift she could have given me, and then I was able to pass that on to my daughter when my daughter was young. My daughter grew up knowing that when we were out on a day's shopping, that if we seen somebody who lived on the streets, then we would buy them a meal, we would help them out, we would treat them like valid members of society. So I want to get that across first of all, because this isn't a this isn't she wonderful. It's not about that. It's about, we don't know unless we are shown. I didn't know that what I had been taught was very divisional, and as I said, it wasn't an intended education of division. It was lack of understanding, lack of education, and I was gifted that gift of education and learning in my early 20s, and I was able to give that to my daughter. And that's what I want this video to be about. You may not feel inspired to do that. You have to use your discernment. You have to go inwards and look at what's right for you. But I also know in my life, because I've been ebbs and flows, it's taken me a long time to reach a place and a space where I'm not yo-yoing. And there's many factors in that. There was internal healing that needed doing, and there were also outside factors that I needed to basically release from my energies. I was carrying people that weren't aligned with where I'm aligned and going to. And so I've had ebbs and flows. I've had moments in my life where I've been very very affluent, and there have been times in my life where I'm thinking but it's been moments, and it's the one thing that the spiritual path has taught me is to assess each person individually, be observant, listen, actively listen to what's being said, actively be observant of what's being demonstrated in front of you, and to feel into the energies, not in an intrusive way, not into I'm going to pry into your energies and see what all your secrets are, because if you can read energy, that is a misuse of a gift that you were given by God. That your gifts are not used for that, but you can kind of feel into the boundaries. Is this a person that resonates with me? And give people time. Don't just jump in there, which is hands up. What I did is like, oh, they're a spiritual person. Well, I'm going to be aligned with them, because not all spirituality is like that. And I say that because there was another incident not so long ago where I went to a chapel with another spiritual soul, and we were doing some work there, or I was doing some work there. And it was interesting because there were the polarities of energies going on in that moment. So there was the lightness and the darkness there in that chapel. And it was interesting because I had my eyes closed at the time as I was doing the work, and I was bringing down the light and anchoring that light and doing what I was being nudged to do by my team. And I could feel the assistance of somebody else. And I assumed it was the person I had actually gone there with, only to find out when I came out of that and the work was done that it was a gentleman that had come in and sat opposite me, and he had been, and I could tell it was him because it was the same energetic signature. And it was interesting because I acknowledged that just through looking him in the eye and smiling, and we exchanged a look. And then when I was sat outside, I can remember saying to the person I'd gone there with, wow, he's a disciple. And they looked up and went, oh, he's a vagrant, and was very dismissive. And again, it was a beautiful gift of learning, because in that moment I realized that where they were on their journey was still looking superficially rather than feeling into the energies. And so it can be challenging and it can be a struggle, because many people do not understand what we are doing. And it's that catch-22, because we don't do what we do to be shouting it from the rooftops, saying, look at me, aren't I good? This is what I do. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. But when you're mixing, when you've got people in your everyday life and you go into a meditation, but they think that you're taking an afternoon snooze, or you're doing energy work, and if you do energy work to the outside world, it doesn't look like you're doing anything, but in fact it's completely exhausting. You can give the impression, or they perceive you to not being doing anything, or even in its worst form, thinking that you're lazy, because they are so entrenched in the 3D world. They are so entrenched in that money god that you need to go and do your 9 to 5, bring home a stable wage. Otherwise you're not doing anything, you're not worth anything. You have to have X, Y and Z in the bank account. Otherwise you're not doing anything with your life. You don't have anything in your life. There is no value to you. There is no worth. And it's very challenging. It is very challenging. And it's not about letting them know, actually, yes, you are worth anything, because you don't need people if they do not have. And I think this is that in-between phase on your spiritual journey of wanting initially that acceptance of who you are, and then realizing that those around you don't accept you at all. The love that you're given is conditional, not unconditional. And then moving through that and being a solitary soul and not telling anybody anything because you don't want the disappointment, to then taking it that next step again and being okay with it, understanding that it's not everybody's journey, understanding that not everybody's going to understand, understanding that everybody is where they're supposed to be in that moment, and so are you, and so it's not important. That's where the gold is. That's the phase where the gold is. I wanted to get on here and I wanted to be able to tell you that, because it is phases that you step through. And for some of you, there may be a few more steps added into that, and others of you, you may hop, jump and skip from one phase to the end phase, which is where the gold is. We're all different. We all have different aspects that we need to learn. And let's remember that time is not linear, it's spiral. So we may go from phase A to phase Z instantly, but then there may be a lesson later on and it takes us back again. What we're worth, what our value is the worth and the value that we give to ourselves, not what we are given by other people. That's where the gold is. Other people can teach us things. Even the negative aspects of walking in the earthly realm gives us gold if we choose to see it, if we choose to step back. When I first started this video, I talked about my mother being a war baby, and the basic needs, her basic needs, food, were restricted. And so that sense of lack, that fear of not having enough, is very real for her. And because of the realness, the reality of that fear, the reality of the circumstances that she grew up in, meant that as a parent, she passed that down to us. These are the challenges that we're facing, because we need to sit back and recognize she did nothing wrong. She was a product of what was going on in society at that time. The same as there are children being given that same programming today in areas of conflict, in areas of war, where there is real lack of basic needs. The challenge for us is to work with these people, work with ourselves if we've been handed down these fears, and work with the people that are currently experiencing these fearful paradigms, so that future generations are not just mimicking those experiences. Lack is a human perception, not a universal reality. That's a hard phrase to take on board if you're in an area of conflict and there is a very real food shortage for you. But if you look at the world on a global scale, where one is starving, another is gluttonous, these are the paradigms from the work that we do as light workers that we're trying to change, that we're working to change, that we are slowly changing. Money is not our God, but money also is not the enemy. The real enemy here is the darkness within us all, that we're unwilling to face, that we're unwilling to bring to the light and take ownership of and look at and change. What are your first thoughts when you think about your self-worth and your self-value? How are you measuring that? Are you measuring that by what you have? Are you measuring that by your bank account? Are you measuring that by your status? Or are you measuring it by the love in your heart and the compassion of your soul. And when you look at other people and you make a judgment call, and we all make judgment calls, are you making that judgment call by what you perceive them to have from the material world? Are they dressed correctly? Do they speak correctly? Have they been educated? Or are you looking at the actions of their heart? Are you looking at the knowledge and compassion of their souls? It's time for us all to start to wake up and do the deep introspection that is going to create positive change on this planet. Not everything we do has to be for gain. Has to be for money. Far too often we are seeing on social media people that are doing acts of kindness, but they're recording it. They're wanting the notoriety. They are still seeking outside validation rather than just have a deep knowing in their heart that they were able to share, to be compassionate to another. Without any bells or whistles, or without anybody else seeing. Weigh up on your scales, those inner scales. Your heart expands, your soul expands. And if it's not terribly expansive at the moment, don't beat yourself up about it. Do something about it. This is not about feeling bad. This is not about feeling shame. This is not about even blaming anyone. This is about learning, growing, expanding. If you listen to this and you think, oh, I've never fed anybody, I've never shared in that way, then just go out and do it. And I'll tell you, the reward for it that you don't discuss with anybody is to make somebody else's day a brighter day. You can't put a value on it. You cannot put a value on it. As I said in the beginning, I was shown that from a colleague. And I was shown that she did that because her upbringing, circumstances had come on to her table that really woke her up to that. And then she woke me up to it. And I thank her every day that she did that for me, that I learnt that. She doesn't know that I thank her every day, but I am desperately grateful, truly grateful for that learning. Now, as I said, you may be called to do something else. It may be as simple as holding a door for somebody who's loaded up with shopping. These little gifts of kindness and compassion is where our true value lies, where our wealth exists. I'll leave that with you. If you've liked the video, then hit that like button. If you've not yet subscribed, press subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you are notified when the new video goes up. And I shall see you on the next one. You take care. Bye bye.